It was a windy Sunday afternoon when we arrived in Port Appin. Having originally planned to paddle the Knoydart Peninsula, the blustery forecast had forced us southwards, with a hastily arranged last-minute plan to circumnavigate Lismore and Shuna, two islands sitting towards the eastern side of Loch Linnhe in the Scottish Highlands. We knew we'd be having a bit of a rough paddle from the port across to Lismore, but with the promise of several days of settled weather ahead, our journey across and into the wind today was simply a minor hurdle. Our plan was for an anti-clockwise circumnavigation around Lismore, with the first leg taking us up and around the northern end through Port Ramsay and on towards north-facing beach on the western shore that would give us shelter from the southerly winds. Crossing the Sound was hard work. With a fierce wind on our beam, we were forced to paddle with a strong ferrying angle to avoid being blown off course. As we neared Lismore's eastern shore, we turned northwards towards the jetty. A large shingle spit extends into the sound here, and I was pushed in by the wind, resulting in a rather bumpy ride. Rounding the north tip of the island gave us a brief respite from the wind as we turned southwest into the somewhat sheltered waters around Port Ramsay before continuing westwards to our planned campsite. As we set about pitching our tents and setting up a tarp as the sitting and cooking area, the weather did ease somewhat, although a light annoying rain persisted. You've got to love the classic Scottish mizzle. Some curious locals popped by to say hi. After such a tiring paddle, we were happy to relax with some dinner and a few beers. By Monday morning, the forecast calm had descended. With mill pond seas awaiting us, we had some coffee and breakfast before packing down the site and preparing to head out. Lismore has a couple of castle ruins, and the first one we passed was Castle Coeffin, built in the 13th century. Only the hall and bailey remain today, the finger-shaped ruins beckoning us in for a much-needed brew and an opportunity to stretch our legs. As the morning passed, we enjoyed exploring Lismore's rugged western shoreline, dotted with occasional small caves and waterfalls, the greyness of the day juxtaposed against the island's vivid autumn hues. We stopped for a quick lunch near a fishery at Port Nangallan, surrounded by small waterfalls draining the nearby bogs into the loch. With only a few hours of daylight left, we now had to press onwards. We planned to slip through a gap between Bernera Island and Lismore into Bernera Bay to save time. We crossed the large bay towards another gap, this one between another small island with the lighthouse and the main island. Landing in the bay, we pulled our boats up above the seaweed and high tide line and set up camp. Taking shelter from the rain, we huddled under our tarp and rustled up some dinner that we washed down with some beers and plenty of wine. Unable to safely set up a fire pit, we lit up the trangia and used that as a makeshift fire instead. We awoke to another grey and calm morning, packing up for an early launch as we had a long paddle ahead of us. We'd be heading all the way up to the top of Shuna where we planned to spend the last night. There was some lovely gentle swell pushing us northwards all morning, and once or twice we even saw a patch of blue sky breaking through the grey. Eventually we were back at the jetty opposite Port Appin, where we briefly disembarked for lunch. Afterwards, we paddled back across to the port for a quick resupply of two essentials, water and crucially beer, before continuing northwards to Shuna. For the first time in a week, the sun finally came out. With less than an hour of light left, we landed at the northwestern corner of Shuna. Unfortunately, this turned out to be a rather difficult spot to camp due to the ground being incredibly rocky. I wouldn't recommend camping on this island, although the views northwards of the loch were lovely as we enjoyed our dinner and beers. As we prepared to leave, Joe and I were particularly excited as our next port of call was Castle Stalker, a small keep on a nearby island, best known for its appearance as the Castle Arg in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, a film I must have watched just about every weekend on VHS as a kid. And quotes fully expended, we began our paddle back towards Port Appin. It was at this point that the sun decided to come out to bid us farewell, leaving us with rather red noses and cheeks.